Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach, and today I want to take a look at David Swallow and dissect some of the stats surrounding his selection process in SuperCoach 2017. Of course, in these player profiles, if you haven't caught them yet, go check them out, but I take a look at some of the pros and cons of each player, then cast a bit of a verdict. And it's getting close now, you know, round one isn't far away at all, so we've really got to hone in on our sides, our final sides, and make those clear-cut decisions on how our structure and our exact players are really going to work. So what do you need to know about David Swallow? 280k in our midfield, and he's currently in 39.7% of sides, so he is very popular, one of the more popular selections. Of course, he has averaged well in the past. 2014 he averaged 103.2, and he's a former number one pick, so the talent isn't lost on him. It's just been a matter of getting that body right, which has been a long battle for him. He's really struggled to get out in the park. Now, he played no games last year and 6 in 2015, and look, those injuries sort of stopped what was a pretty good first 4 years. You know, some really solid numbers. Broke out in 2014, and then his career has been put on ice and halted since. So look, what does that mean for our SuperCoach sides? As always, I'll start with the pros, and of course he's very cheap. 280k for a guy who is capable of averaging 3 figures is very good, and he has looked reasonable through the pre-season. He's got through with a full bill of health, which is what we wanted to see. Now he's looking like he's at full fitness, looking really solid, and he looks like a reasonable chance to play a lot of games this season. Now, of course, we can never say a guy will not get injured. I mean, we always see players that are durable as ever cop injuries from time to time, and a man with Swallow's injury history, it is always going to be a concern, but we can tick the box that he has got through the pre-season well and has looked pretty good. Now, a lot of people will be tossing up between he and O'Meara. O'Meara, of course, is a little bit more expensive, but his JLT Community Series performances have been unbelievable, with some really massive numbers that have really made us stand up and take notice. Whereas for Swallow, his numbers would probably best be described as just solid. Now, he's had some good numbers, played some reasonable game time, shown that he'll play through the midfield as well as sort of rest on a half forward flank at times. So I think he ticks the box for a reasonable scorer. I think we know he can win the ball and is a very good player, and he will get midfield time, and he is cheap. So they're all the things we really want to look at from a positive point of view, and above all, he's gotten through very well, and if you're looking at him, you'll be hoping that he can make you upward of 150k. How quick he makes that, you never know. And if you're really optimistic, you might be thinking he can go beyond the 200k and rise to below 500, maybe push that mark if you're really up and about David Swallow. But as for the negatives, I sort of touched on them there. Of course, the injury history is concerning. He has got through pre-season well, which is what we wanted, but you've always got to be a little bit concerned, and my major concern, which I've outlined with O'Meara, is not just the fact that they could re-injure, but performing to their peak so soon. Now, Swallow has played 6 games in 2 years. It's not just like a guy who's missed 1 year or even just missed 12 weeks, and you sometimes see guys come back really well. I use Daniel Menzel as a prime example. Now, he's probably your worst case scenario where he just re-injured, but it even took him some time. He's playing regular games now, but there was plenty of talk even when he did return that just getting up week after week, despite no further injury, was difficult. You know, with knee soreness and swelling, and you just take that 36 hours extra than most blokes to get up, and it just makes your margins a little narrower, if you know what I mean. You know, we look at a guy who's durable. If he cops a little knock, then he's probably going to be right. You know, okay, he misses Tuesday's training session, but he's fine for the weekend. You know, a bloke like Swallow, a bloke like O'Meara, a bloke like Menzel, you know, they cop a little knock, takes them a little bit longer to get through the week. You know, will they get up? The team's got a 6-day break. The club's always going to take a cautious view and be like, oh, look, you know, he's a quality player, cream of the crop type. Let's not risk him. No point risking him. You know, he'll be right for next round. but he's copped a bit of a knock. Let's just ease David through this week. That's all well and good for Gold Coast. It's not well and good for your SuperCoach side, and that's my concern about these injury-prone players, and not even injury-prone, but guys who are returning from extensive injury. I'm not talking 12 weeks, as I said. I'm talking 2 years of limited week-to-week footy. So that's my major concern. I don't doubt Swallow's ability to play great footy. There'll be opportunity for him to run through the midfield. Rodney Eade outlined that his position will be off the half-forward flank and midfield, predominantly midfield. But as is the case these days, every player with rotations now and the flexibility of teams, every player has a secondary position, and I think Swallow will spend more time than not in the midfield and a wing rather than half forward. But I think you really got to outline what you want from your Swallow selection, and whether you want to go multiple mid prices. I think if you're picking between O'Meara and Swallow, then I think you're definitely going to go with O'Meara. But as for my verdict, I'm basically walking into that already, as I tend to do on every player profile. But I think you're probably going to have to lean towards O'Meara if that's the sort of structure you want to roll with. I think Swallow, if I'm predicting averages, may just go mid-80s, around, 82 to 87, 88 if he really gets going. And if he really went beyond expectation, he might nudge you 90, early 90s. But I really would think the most likely outcome would be a mid-80s average, and I really don't think that's what we want. I think you really need a bit more than that. I know he's cheap, but I just think we've got a lot of cheapish options, whether it be Dane Beams or O'Meara, who are looking better. So I think while Swallow's got through well, he's a smooth mover. I just think we can't underestimate, while we love to look at numbers and averages and stats and JLT stats and game time, we cannot underestimate the human aspect and the element of just the body, and how tough it is to get up week in, week out when you've been out for so long. It's a brutal game, AFL, and I think that Gold Coast will certainly be treating David Swallow with, I suppose, cotton wool, and I guess if he is looking a little sore, they will take the cautious approach, and they've probably already mapped out a season for him where if he does get through the first 5 or 6 rounds really well, then they'll probably look to ease his workload back, whether it be during the week or give him a rest. That'll probably depend on what the team needs in his form, but no doubt they'll have a program set in place to get him through 2017, not only playing good footy, but with the mindset of him playing his best footy in 2018 and beyond. 6 games in 2 years, sore. How's he going to pull up week to week? We need a solid month and a half from him at the start of the season to really generate cash. So take that into consideration. Don't doubt his footballing ability. If you want a hard verdict, it's a no from me. He hasn't entered my team at any stage this pre-season. While I've contemplated O'Meara mentally, he has not entered my team. I think that Beams and O'Meara are probably 2 guys that you would consider more heavily, probably because they have similar risks involved with them, but a far more convincing scoring output. So I think that's probably your risk versus reward situation there. And I know you've got to pay a little bit more for those other couple of guys, but I think it probably would be worth it if you want a mid-price option in your midfield. So that's a wrap up for David Swallow. And a really interesting topic is Swallow, and in more general terms, players returning from extensive injuries. So while this is about David Swallow more particularly, it can also relate, as I've gone on to, with some other players that are coming back and returning from injury. So certainly relevant to a couple of players. Now, obviously we're coming into just a week or so away from round 1, depending when you're listening to this. The countdown within a week is on. And I guess these player profiles have been pretty well received. I've enjoyed doing them, but this will probably be one of the last. I think there have been a few requests, and hopefully I've gotten round to most of them. And there might be a couple of others, and feel free to say any that you really want to see profiled. But I try to go for a broader aspect, and while there may be some individual guys who want to hear some, I try to cater for the broad community and the interest of broad super coaches. So I think there probably won't be too many. Obviously there's a few other more pressing videos I'd like to do as we close into round 1, so there may be the odd player profile or two coming, so stay tuned for those, and hopefully you've enjoyed them. But if there isn't any more player profiles, as I say, I'll see how I go, but there'll certainly be more videos and podcasts to come. I'm thinking I might preview a bit of our SuperCoach draft. We had our draft night the other day, and I think I might take a look at that and just scope for the interest in draft and see if people enjoy viewing that and the different concept it is, and also just some burning questions that are on our mind. I know they were well received last season when I took a look at the Crouch brothers and Sam Gray, Aaron Hall, Toby Green, a bit of a comparison. They were quite topical at the time last year. So similar to that, I think a bit like player profiles, but a more positional looking at that. So I might compare your Swallow and O'Meara as I sort of did just before, or taking consideration of the risk aspect of starting an O'Meara, Beams, Fife and Swallow, things like that. Take a look at your forward line. There's a lot of mid-price options that are tempting people. Caddy, Wingard, Higgins, Nankervis, Roughhead, Steele, Billings. There's a lot of guys in there. And the ruck situation, I think that's probably one of the first ones I'll do. You know, do we go with Gawn? Do we go you set and forget? There's a lot of value out there. Sanderlands, you know, Nankervis and Sanderlands, are you going to go with both? If so, how do you set up? Best case scenarios, things like that. I think they could be really interesting videos, and really the questions that people want answered in that final week leading into round 1, I'll look to attend to. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed that one, and I look forward to your comments over the next week or so. And yeah, certainly stay tuned. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel as always, and of course comment. It'd be good to hear from you guys, as it always is. So thanks for tuning in once more. I'll catch you soon.